The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late March, and when I saw the words "Notice of Lien" printed across the top in bold red letters, my coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered across the kitchen tile. I'm Ethan Vance, a 34-year-old software engineer who had bought this modest ranch-style house in Sunset Ridge, Arizona, just 18 months ago, thinking I'd finally found my slice of the American dream. Now, apparently, the Sunset Ridge Homeowners Association was claiming I owed them $12,000 in violation fines, and they'd placed a lien on my property to collect. I sat down at my kitchen table, ignoring the coffee pooling around broken ceramic shards, and read through the notice with increasing disbelief. According to the HOA, I had committed numerous violations over the past year. My mailbox was the wrong shade of black. I'd planted unapproved flowers in my front garden beds. My garage door had been left open for more than 30 minutes on multiple occasions. I'd parked my work truck in my driveway overnight instead of in the garage. The list went on for 3 pages, each violation carrying a fine that had apparently been accumulating interest at a rate I was certain couldn't be legal. I'd never received a single warning letter, not one notice about any of these supposed violations. The first communication I'd gotten from the HOA since moving in was this lien notice, and it was demanding payment in full within 30 days or they'd foreclose on my house. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and called my buddy Marcus, who worked as a paralegal downtown. "Marcus, I need help. The HOA just dropped a bomb on me." "Slow down, man. What happened?" I explained the situation, reading him some of the violations. He let out a low whistle. "Ethan, that sounds completely illegal. HOAs have to follow proper notice procedures before they can place a lien. You can't just hit someone with 12 grand in fines without any prior communication. Who's the HOA president?" I flipped through the paperwork until I found a signature at the bottom. "Someone named Patricia Kensington." Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Oh man, Patricia. I've heard about her. She's notorious in the HOA management world around here. Real piece of work. She's been sued before by other homeowners, but she always manages to settle out of court. Look, you need to get a real estate attorney, not just me, but I can point you in the right direction." That's how I found myself sitting in the office of Jennifer Rodriguez 2 days later. Jennifer was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in HOA disputes and real estate law. She reviewed my documents with a practiced eye, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This is egregious," she finally said, looking up at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Vance, not only did they fail to provide proper notice, but several of these violations don't even appear in the CC and Articus for your neighborhood. I pulled them up before you arrived. There's no rule about what shade of black your mailbox needs to be, and the interest rate they're charging is well above the legal limit for HOA fines in Arizona." "So what do we do?" I asked, feeling a spark of hope for the first time since Tuesday. "We fight back hard. But first, I need you to tell me everything you know about this Patricia Kensington and the HOA board." I didn't know much, which was part of the problem. I'd been so focused on my job, working long hours on a major project, that I'd barely interacted with my neighbors. The HOA had seemed like a non-issue when I bought the house. The previous owner had mentioned the monthly dues were reasonable, and I'd signed off on everything without really digging into the details. Stupid, I know, but I was a first-time home buyer and I'd been so excited about finally owning something. "Patricia lives in the biggest house in the neighborhood," I told Jennifer. "It's on Crimson Drive, the main entrance street. 3 stories, massive front yard, looks like something out of a magazine. I've seen her around a few times. Middle-aged woman, always wearing workout clothes even though I've never seen her actually exercise. Blonde hair, always looks like she just left the salon. Drives a white Mercedes SUV. Jennifer made notes. And the rest of the board? I have no idea. I've never gotten any communications about board meetings or elections or anything. That's violation number 1 right there, Jennifer said. Arizona law requires HOAs to notify all homeowners about board meetings and elections. Let me do some digging. In the meantime, don't pay them a cent and don't sign anything they send you. Over the next 2 weeks, Jennifer worked her magic. She subpoenaed HOA records, which revealed a pattern of behavior that made my stomach turn. Patricia Kensington had been HOA president for 6 years, running unopposed in every election because she never actually informed anyone when elections were happening. She'd hand-picked her board members, all of whom were her personal friends. Together, they'd been systematically targeting homeowners with questionable fines and violations. But here's where it got really interesting. Jennifer discovered that Patricia and her board had been pocketing money from the HOA accounts. They'd been inflating vendor contracts and getting kickbacks. They'd charged homeowners for repairs and improvements to common areas that never actually happened. They'd embezzled over $200,000 over the past 6 years. We've got her, Jennifer told me during a meeting in late April. But here's what I'm proposing. We don't just defend against this lien. We go on the offensive. We file a counter lawsuit for fraud, harassment, breach of fiduciary duty, and violation of Arizona HOA statutes. And here's the kicker under Arizona law. If an HOA board member is found to have acted fraudulently or in bad faith, they can be held personally liable for damages. Meaning what exactly? Jennifer's smile was sharp. Meaning we can go after Patricia's personal assets, including her house. I felt a surge of something that might have been vindictive satisfaction. Let's do it. We filed our counter lawsuit on May 2nd. I knew it had been served when my phone started ringing off the hook 2 days later. The number wasn't one I recognized, so I let it go to voicemail. The message that came through was pure venom. This is Patricia Kensington, and I don't know who you think you are, but you've made a serious mistake. You can't just sue the HOA because you don't want to follow the rules. Every homeowner agreed to abide by our covenants when they bought their property. You're wasting everyone's time and money with this frivolous lawsuit, and when you lose, we'll add the legal fees to your fines. Call me back immediately so we can settle this reasonably. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Jennifer. She called me back within the hour, laughing. She's panicking. That's a threat, and it's going to look terrible in court. Save every communication she sends you. Patricia sent plenty. Over the next week, I received daily letters from the HOA, each one more threatening than the last. She claimed I was damaging property values. She said I was preventing the HOA from maintaining common areas. She threatened to fine me additional amounts for pursuing frivolous litigation. Each letter went straight to Jennifer. Then the really dirty tactics started. I came home from work one evening in mid-May to find a citation from the city on my door. According to the notice, someone had complained that I was running a business out of my home without proper permits. It was completely false. I worked from home occasionally, but I wasn't running a business from my house. I called the city and explained the situation, and the inspector who'd filed the report admitted that the complaint had come from Patricia Kensington. She was very insistent, the inspector told me. Called us 3 times in one day, but when I came out to investigate, I didn't see any evidence of business activity. I had to file the report because she'd made the complaint, but I noted in my notes that it appeared unfounded. 2 days later, my trash wasn't picked up. When I called the waste management company, they told me the HOA had contacted them claiming my account was in violation of community rules and that service should be suspended. It took hours on the phone to get that sorted out. Then someone reported my car as abandoned to the police. An officer showed up at my door at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, apologizing profusely when I explained the situation. "We've been getting a lot of calls from a Patricia Kensington about properties in this neighborhood," the officer said. "Between you and me, it's starting to feel like harassment." "It is harassment," I told him, "and it's all going to be documented in court." Jennifer was building a case that went beyond my wildest expectations. She'd found 6 other homeowners in Sunset Ridge who'd been targeted by Patricia's schemes. The Hendersons had been fined $5,000 for painting their shutters the wrong shade of gray, even though the paint color was specifically listed as approved in the CC and Articus. The Kowalskis had been threatened with foreclosure over a basketball hoop in their driveway. The Martinez family had been hit with violations for children's toys being visible in their yard. Each family had a story of harassment, unexpected fines, and violations that appeared out of nowhere. And none of them had ever received proper notice or been given an opportunity to attend board meetings. We filed an amended complaint adding 3 of these families as co-plaintiffs. The local news got wind of the story in early June, and suddenly reporters were calling me for interviews. I declined on Jennifer's advice, but Patricia apparently had no such restraint. She went on the local evening news and painted herself as a victim of ungrateful homeowners who didn't appreciate all her hard work. "I volunteer my time to keep this neighborhood beautiful and maintain property values," Patricia said, clutching a tissue and looking tearful. "And this is the thanks I get. These people want to turn Sunset Ridge into a slum. They want to park broken-down cars on their lawns and paint their houses purple. Someone has to maintain standards." The interview backfired spectacularly when the news station did a follow-up piece investigating Patricia's claims. They interviewed residents who contradicted her story. They showed footage of the immaculate neighborhood and questioned what violations actually existed. They even interviewed a legal expert who explained that Arizona HOA law required proper notice and fair procedures. Public sentiment turned against Patricia fast. A Facebook group called Sunset Ridge HOA Accountability popped up and quickly gained over 300 members. Neighbors I'd never spoken to stopped me during evening walks to express support. Someone started a GoFundMe to help with legal costs, though I didn't need it. The attention was uncomfortable, but it also felt validating. The preliminary hearing was set for July 15th. Jennifer prepped me extensively, drilling me on potential questions and reviewing the evidence we'd present. "The judge is going to see right through Patricia's act," she assured me. "We have documentation, we have witnesses, and we have financial records that prove embezzlement. This isn't just about your Lien anymore. This is about systemic fraud." The morning of the hearing, I put on my best suit and tried to calm my nerves. The courthouse in Phoenix was imposing, all concrete and glass, and I felt tiny walking up the steps. Jennifer met me in the lobby, looking confident in a sharp navy suit. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that hummed slightly. Judge Margaret Thorpe presided, a stern-looking woman in her 60s who had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Patricia sat at the opposing table with her attorney, a nervous-looking man named Robert Finch who kept shuffling papers. Patricia had dressed for sympathy. She wore a modest blouse and pearls, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like someone's kindly grandmother, not someone who'd embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when her eyes met mine across the courtroom, there was nothing kindly in that gaze. Jennifer opened with a methodical presentation of facts. She outlined the lien that had been placed on my property without proper notice. She showed documentation proving I'd never received violation warnings. She presented the CC and Articus and demonstrated that several of the violations I'd been charged with didn't actually exist in the governing documents. Robert Finch tried to argue that notice had been sent, but he couldn't produce copies of any letters or emails. He claimed the HOA had followed proper procedures, but when Jennifer asked him to cite which specific procedures, he stammered and looked at Patricia for help. Then Jennifer dropped the hammer. She presented the financial records showing the embezzlement. She showed checks made out to fake vendors, invoices for work never performed, and bank statements showing transfers to Patricia's personal account. Judge Thorpe's expression grew colder as the evidence piled up. "Mr. Finch," she said, "does your client have an explanation for these financial discrepancies?" Robert Finch looked like he wanted to disappear. Patricia leaned over and whispered something to him urgently. He cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client maintains that all financial transactions were legitimate and approved by the board." "The board that she handpicked without proper elections," Jennifer interjected. "The board that never held properly noticed meetings. That board." "Counselor, I'll ask the questions," Judge Thorpe said, but there was a hint of approval in her tone. She turned to Patricia. "Mrs. Kensington, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you provide proper notice of board elections to all homeowners in Sunset Ridge?" Patricia stood up, and I could see her trying to summon tears. "Your Honor, I've dedicated 6 years of my life to that community. I've worked tirelessly to maintain property values and keep the neighborhood safe and beautiful. If there were some procedural irregularities, they were honest mistakes, not malicious intent." "That's not an answer to my question," Judge Thorpe said flatly. "Did you or did you not provide proper notice?" "The notices were posted on the community bulletin board," Patricia said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "Arizona law requires direct written or electronic notice to all homeowners," Jennifer said. "A posting on a bulletin board doesn't meet that requirement." Judge Thorpe made a note. "We'll address that. Now, Mrs. Kensington, let's talk about these financial records. Can you explain this check for $15,000 to Desert Landscaping Services for common area maintenance in March 2024? "Yes, we hired them to redo the landscaping at the neighborhood entrance." Jennifer stood up. "Your Honor, I've submitted photographs showing that the landscaping at the neighborhood entrance has not been changed in over 3 years. I've also submitted a statement from Desert Landscaping Services indicating they've never done business with Sunset Ridge HOA." The courtroom went silent. Patricia's face had gone pale, then red. "That's not I mean. There must be some mistake in the records." Judge Thorpe spent the next 20 minutes methodically going through the financial evidence. Each time, Patricia had an excuse that fell apart under the slightest scrutiny. Her attorney looked increasingly miserable. Finally, Judge Thorpe set down her pen. "I've heard enough for today. Mr. Finch, I'm ordering your client to provide complete financial records for the HOA for the past 6 years, including all bank statements, canceled checks, and vendor contracts. I'm also ordering her to provide documentation of all board elections and meeting notices. You have 2 weeks. We'll reconvene on July 29th. She turned to me. "Mr. Vance, I'm issuing a temporary injunction preventing the HOA from taking any foreclosure action on your property pending resolution of this case. The lien will remain in place, but cannot be enforced." It wasn't a total victory, but it was a start. Jennifer was pleased. She's going to dig her own grave when she tries to produce those records, she told me as we left the courthouse. Either she can't produce them, which proves our case, or she produces them and they show the embezzlement even more clearly. Patricia, apparently, chose option 3, try to flee. I got a call from Jennifer on July 22nd, a week before our next hearing. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Patricia's attorney just filed a motion to continue the case. He's claiming she's had a medical emergency and is hospitalized." "Is that true?" "I'm looking into it, but my gut says this is a stalling tactic." Jennifer hired a private investigator, a woman named Sarah who looked like a suburban mom but had worked in intelligence before going private. Sarah reported back within 48 hours. "Patricia Kensington isn't in any hospital. She's been loading boxes into a storage unit. Looks like she's planning to bolt." Jennifer immediately filed an emergency motion with the court. Judge Thorpe issued an order requiring Patricia to appear at a hearing on July 26th to show cause why she shouldn't be held in contempt. She also ordered Patricia to surrender her passport. The July 26th hearing was even more dramatic than the first one. Patricia showed up looking disheveled, her usual perfect appearance cracking. Her attorney tried to argue that his client had been overwhelmed and stressed, that she'd made some mistakes, but had never intended to flee. Judge Thorpe wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Kensington, you lied about a medical emergency. You failed to produce any of the documents I ordered. And according to the investigator's report, you've been moving assets and preparing to leave the state. This court does not look kindly on such behavior." "Your Honor, please, I can explain," Patricia started, but her voice had lost its confident edge. She sounded desperate now. "You'll have your chance to explain at trial," Judge Thorpe said, "but given your behavior, I'm escalating my previous orders. The HOA is hereby placed under court supervision. I'm appointing an independent management company to take over all HOA operations immediately. Mrs. Kensington, you are removed as president effective immediately, and you and your board members are barred from any involvement in HOA affairs pending resolution of this case." Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. "You can't do that. I'm an elected official of the association." "You were never properly elected, as the evidence clearly shows, and your fiduciary duty to the homeowners has been so thoroughly breached that I have no choice but to remove you. Now, as for the criminal aspects of this case, I'm referring this matter to the Maricopa County District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential fraud and embezzlement charges." That last part made my heart race. I hadn't expected criminal charges, though in hindsight it made perfect sense. Patricia had committed crimes, and now she was going to face real consequences. The main trial was scheduled for September 3rd, 2 months away. In the meantime, life in Sunset Ridge changed dramatically. The new management company sent out a newsletter to all homeowners explaining the situation and inviting everyone to a community meeting. Over 100 people showed up, filling the elementary school cafeteria where the meeting was held. The management company representative, a straightforward woman named Helen, explained that they'd be conducting a full audit of HOA finances and operations. "We're essentially starting from scratch," she said. "We'll be reviewing all rules and regulations to ensure they comply with Arizona law. We'll be holding proper elections for a new board, and we'll be working to recover any misappropriated funds." The atmosphere was part angry, part relieved. People stood up and shared their own stories of harassment and unfair fines. The Kowalskis talked about being threatened over a basketball hoop. An elderly couple named the Patels described being fined for having too many garden gnomes. A single mother named Rachel described being charged $500 because her trash can was visible from the street on a non-collection day. "We're going to make this right," Helen promised. "Any fines assessed without proper notice will be reviewed and likely reversed. We're here to serve the community, not to harass homeowners." I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even fully realized I'd been carrying. For the first time since that certified letter arrived, I felt like maybe everything would actually be okay. The criminal investigation moved faster than the civil case. In early August, 2 detectives from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office showed up at my house to ask questions. They were professional and thorough, taking detailed notes about my interactions with Patricia and the HOA. "You're not the only victim," Detective Ramirez told me. "We've identified at least 15 homeowners who were targeted with fraudulent fines, and the Financial Crimes Unit has traced over $250,000 that was embezzled from HOA accounts." $250,000, I repeated, stunned. It was over 200 when we looked at the records in July. "She accelerated her activities in the past year," Detective Ramirez explained, "probably because she knew the scheme couldn't last forever. She was trying to grab as much as she could before it all fell apart." On August 14th, Patricia Kensington was arrested at her home. The news stations covered it, showing footage of her being led out in handcuffs, her perfect facade completely shattered. She was charged with 15 counts of fraud, 3 counts of embezzlement, and multiple counts of forgery related to fake vendor invoices. Her bail was set at $100,000, which she posted, but the damage was done. Her reputation was destroyed, her legal troubles were just beginning, and the civil trial was still looming. September 3rd arrived with temperatures still hovering near 100 degrees in Phoenix. I took the day off work and arrived at the courthouse early, wanting to be fully present for whatever was about to happen. Jennifer met me with a thick folder of documents and a confident smile. "Today's the day," she said. "We're going to finish this." The trial lasted 3 days. Jennifer methodically presented our case, calling witnesses who testified about the harassment and improper procedures. She presented financial experts who explained how Patricia had embezzled funds. She showed emails and documents that proved Patricia had intentionally avoided proper notice requirements because she wanted to maintain absolute control. Robert Finch mounted a weak defense, trying to argue that Patricia had believed she was acting within her authority as HOA president. But his heart clearly wasn't in it, and Patricia's recent arrest had made his job nearly impossible. On the 3rd day, Patricia herself took the stand. It was a disaster for her. Jennifer's cross-examination was surgical, picking apart every excuse and rationalization. Patricia tried to maintain her victim narrative, claiming she'd been overworked and underappreciated, but it fell flat. "Mrs. Kensington," Jennifer said, holding up a bank statement, "can you explain this $5,000 transfer from the HOA account to your personal checking account in April 2024? "That was reimbursement for expenses I paid out of pocket," Patricia said. "What expenses?" "Office supplies, postage, things like that." $5,000 worth of office supplies. Jennifer's skepticism was clear. "Do you have receipts?" Patricia hesitated. "I may not have kept all of them." "You don't have any of them, do you?" Jennifer pressed. "Because those expenses never existed. That was simply theft." By the time Patricia stepped down from the stand, she looked broken. Whatever power she'd once wielded in Sunset Ridge was completely gone. Judge Thorpe took a day to review everything before delivering her verdict on September 6th. The courtroom was packed with Sunset Ridge residents who wanted to see the conclusion. "This is one of the most egregious cases of HOA abuse I've encountered in my 20 years on the bench," Judge Thorpe began. Mrs. Kensington systematically violated her fiduciary duty to the homeowners of Sunset Ridge. She enriched herself at their expense. She harassed and intimidated residents who questioned her authority. She violated multiple state statutes governing HOA operations. She turned to look directly at Patricia. I find in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts. The lien placed on Mr. Vance's property is hereby dissolved and declared void. Mr. Vance owes nothing to the HOA. Furthermore, I find that Mrs. Kensington acted with fraud and malicious intent. My heart was pounding. This was it. Under Arizona law, Judge Thorpe continued, when an HOA board member is found to have acted fraudulently, they can be held personally liable for damages. Mr. Vance has proven substantial damages, including emotional distress, time lost from work, and legal fees. The other plaintiffs have proven similar damages. I'm awarding Mr. Vance compensatory damages in the amount of $50,000. I'm awarding punitive damages in the amount of $200,000, meant to punish Mrs. Kensington's egregious behavior and deter others from similar conduct. I felt lightheaded. $250,000 total. That was more than I'd ever dreamed of. But Judge Thorpe wasn't finished. Additionally, Mr. Vance sought specific performance in his counterclaim, requesting that Mrs. Kensington's house be placed under lien to secure payment of damages, mirroring the action she took against him. I find this to be an appropriate remedy. A lien will be placed on Mrs. Kensington's property at 847 Crimson Drive in the amount of $250,000, payable within 90 days. If payment is not made, Mr. Vance will have the right to foreclose on the property. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Patricia's face went white, then red, then she started crying hysterical, ugly sobs that echoed off the wood paneling. Her attorney looked shell-shocked. Judge Thorpe banged her gavel. Order. Furthermore, I'm awarding damages to the other plaintiffs as well, to be paid by Mrs. Kensington personally. The total judgment against Mrs. Kensington is $475,000. Court is adjourned. I sat there stunned as the judge left and the courtroom slowly emptied. Jennifer was grinning ear to ear. We did it, she said. We actually did it. I can't believe it, I managed to say. $475,000. She'll never be able to pay that. No, Jennifer agreed. She won't. Which means in 90 days you're going to own her house. The reality of it hit me in waves over the following days. Patricia's massive 3-story showcase home, the one she'd used as a symbol of her status and authority in the neighborhood, was going to become mine if she couldn't pay the judgment. And given that she was facing criminal charges and had legal bills piling up, there was no way she'd come up with that kind of money. The local news covered the verdict extensively. I gave one interview, keeping it brief and dignified. I just wanted to be left alone in my own home, I told the reporter. The HOA's actions were illegal and wrong, and the court agreed. I hope this sends a message that HOA boards can't abuse their authority without consequences. Patricia, facing criminal charges and financial ruin, tried one last desperate move. In early October, her attorney filed a motion asking Judge Thorpe to reduce the judgment or allow a payment plan. Jennifer filed a fierce opposition, and Judge Thorpe denied the motion without even holding a hearing. The court's judgment stands, her written order said. Mrs. Kensington has shown no remorse and no indication that she understands the severity of her actions. She will not be given special consideration. The 90-day deadline arrived on December 5th. Patricia hadn't paid a cent. Her criminal trial was scheduled for February, and she was apparently using every dollar she could scrape together for her criminal defense attorney. Jennifer filed foreclosure papers the next day. The foreclosure process in Arizona, when uncontested, moves relatively quickly. Patricia didn't even fight it. Her attorney filed a notice stating she wouldn't be contesting the foreclosure, probably because there was no legal basis to do so. The court set a foreclosure sale date for January 15, 2026. I drove by Patricia's house a few times in December. The yard, once immaculate, was showing signs of neglect. The roses needed deadheading. Leaves had piled up in the corners. I never saw Patricia herself. She'd become a recluse, apparently hiding inside while the walls closed in around her. The foreclosure sale was held on the courthouse steps on a cold January morning. Jennifer had explained that I could bid on the property, and since I was the judgment creditor, I had first rights. There were a few other curious bidders, but when I opened with a bid of $250,000, the amount of my judgment, no one else competed. The auctioneer's gavel came down. Sold to Mr. Ethan Vance for $250,000. Just like that, I owned Patricia Kensington's house. The eviction process was almost anticlimactic. Patricia had 30 days to vacate. I actually felt a twinge of something that might have been pity when I thought about her having to pack up and leave the house she'd been so proud of. But then, I remembered the stress and fear I'd felt opening that Lien notice. The harassment, the threats, and the pity evaporated. She left on February 10th, 4 days before her criminal trial was set to begin. I wasn't there to see her go, but my neighbor Tom, who lived next door to Patricia's former house, texted me a photo of a U-Haul truck parked in the driveway. "She's out," he wrote. "Good riddance." I took ownership of the property on February 11th. Walking through the house for the first time as its owner was surreal. It was beautiful, I had to admit. 3 stories, 5 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen with marble countertops, a master suite with a balcony overlooking the neighborhood. It was worth at least $700,000 on the open market. I had a choice to make. I could sell it and pocket a substantial profit. I could rent it out, or I could move in and sell my smaller house. After talking it over with Jennifer, who'd become a friend through this process, I decided to move in. My little ranch house would be a rental property, generating income. The bigger house would be my home, a constant reminder that standing up to bullies and fighting for what's right could actually work out. Patricia's criminal trial began on February 14th. I attended the first day, sitting in the back of the courtroom and watching as prosecutors laid out the evidence of her crimes. The jury looked appalled as they heard about the embezzlement, the fake invoices, the harassment of homeowners. I didn't attend the rest of the trial. I was busy moving into my new house, painting rooms, making it my own. But Jennifer kept me updated. The trial lasted a week, and the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Patricia was sentenced on March 10th. I did attend that hearing, wanting to see the final chapter of this saga. Judge Thorpe, who'd been assigned the criminal case as well, looked down at Patricia with no sympathy. "You held a position of trust in your community, and you betrayed that trust in the most serious ways possible," the judge said. "You stole from your neighbors. You harassed and intimidated people who were simply trying to live peacefully in their homes. You showed no remorse, even when caught. This court sentences you to 6 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, in the amount of $250,000 to the HOA and $475,000 to the individual plaintiffs. Though I understand those civil judgments have already been largely satisfied through foreclosure proceedings." Patricia, wearing an orange jumpsuit, didn't react. She just stared straight ahead, looking hollowed out and defeated. As the bailiffs led her away, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes. Vindication, definitely. But also a kind of sadness that it had come to this, that someone's need for control and power had destroyed their entire life. I left the courthouse and drove back to Sunset Ridge, to the neighborhood that had been a source of so much stress and conflict. But things were different now. The new HOA board, properly elected with high voter turnout, was made up of reasonable people who actually cared about the community. They'd rolled back most of Patricia's excessive rules. They'd refunded fines to people who'd been unfairly targeted. They'd instituted transparent financial reporting and regular town halls. My house, the house that had been Patricia's symbol of authority, was being transformed into something that actually represented who I was. I turned one of the bedrooms into an office, with multiple monitors for my software development work. I'd adopted a dog, a goofy golden retriever named Buddy, who loved the big backyard. I'd started getting to know my neighbors as actual people, not just faces I passed while hurrying to and from work. Tom from next door came over one evening in late March, bringing beer and helping me assemble a new grill for the back patio. "You know," he said, cracking open a can, "when Patricia lived here, nobody ever came over. She made it clear she was above socializing with the regular folks. It's nice having a normal person in this house." I'm not sure if suing the HOA president and winning her house in court qualifies me as normal, I said with a laugh. Hey, you did what you had to do. She was destroying this neighborhood. Someone had to stop her. We grilled steaks and talked about work, sports, and life. It was ordinary and comfortable, exactly what I'd wanted when I bought my first house in Sunset Ridge all those months ago. The Sunset Ridge community had a block party in April, organized by the new HOA board as a way to bring everyone together and start fresh. I volunteered to help set up, arranging tables and chairs in the common area near the neighborhood entrance. The same entrance where Patricia had supposedly spent $15,000 on landscaping that never happened. Over 100 people showed up. Kids ran around playing tag while adults chatted and ate burgers and hot dogs from rented grills. The Martinez family brought homemade tamales. The Kowalskis brought a keg of craft beer from a local brewery. The Patels brought samosas and pakoras that disappeared within minutes. People kept coming up to me, shaking my hand, thanking me for standing up to Patricia. It was embarrassing and gratifying in equal measure. "You saved this neighborhood," Rachel, the single mom who'd been fined over a trash can, told me. "Seriously, if you hadn't fought back, she would have just kept getting worse." "I had a great attorney," I demurred, "and I got lucky with the judge." "You had courage," she said firmly. "A lot of people would have just paid the fines and kept their heads down." Maybe she was right. I'd been terrified throughout the entire process, constantly worried that somehow I'd lose and end up worse off than when I started. But I'd had good legal help, and the law had been on my side, and sometimes that's enough. As the sun set over Sunset Ridge, painting the Arizona sky in shades of orange and pink, I stood on what used to be Patricia's balcony and looked out over the neighborhood. My neighborhood now, in a way it hadn't been before. Not just because I owned a house here, but because I'd fought for it. I'd stood up for myself and for my neighbors, and we'd won. The HOA had put a lien on my house for violations I didn't commit. I'd countersued and won the president's house. It sounded almost absurd when I said it that way, like something from a movie rather than real life. But it had happened, and I was living in the proof of it. Buddy barked from the yard below, wanting attention. I headed downstairs, walking through the house that had once symbolized tyranny and control but now just felt like home. My home. hard-won and all the more valuable because of it. In the end, Patricia Kensington learned a lesson that every HOA board member should know. The authority entrusted to you by homeowners is a responsibility, not a weapon. Use it to serve the community, not yourself. Follow the law, treat people fairly, and remember that the people in your neighborhood aren't subjects to be ruled over. They're neighbors, fellow human beings who deserve respect and dignity. I never saw Patricia again after that sentencing hearing. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she'd been sent to a minimum security facility in Florence, Arizona. Her husband had divorced her during the criminal trial, taking their 2 adult children with him. She'd lost everything: her house, her reputation, her freedom, her family. Part of me wondered if I should feel guilty about that, but I couldn't quite get there. I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd simply defended myself against illegal and abusive actions. The consequences Patricia faced were the result of her own choices, her own crimes. I'd just been the catalyst that brought everything to light. The months rolled by. Summer arrived with its brutal Arizona heat, and I spent weekends in my pool, another feature of the house I'd never expected to own, enjoying the water. And the fact that I didn't have to worry about some HOA violation for having pool toys visible from the street. Fall brought cooler weather and football season. Winter was mild and perfect, the reason people moved to Arizona in the first place. Jennifer and I stayed in touch. She'd gotten several new clients as a result of the publicity from my case, homeowners in other neighborhoods dealing with abusive HOAs. "You started something," she told me over lunch one day. "People are realizing they don't have to just accept whatever their HOA tells them. They have rights." "I just wish I hadn't had to go through all that stress to prove the point," I said. "True. But think about all the people you've helped by doing it. The other homeowners in Sunset Ridge who were being harassed. The people who'll benefit from the reforms the new board is making. The people in other neighborhoods who are finding the courage to stand up for themselves because they saw your story." She had a point. If my experience could help others avoid similar abuse, then maybe all the stress and fear and sleepless nights had been worth it. A year after the initial Lien notice arrived that day, my coffee mug had shattered on the kitchen floor. I hosted a dinner party at my house. I invited Jennifer, Marcus, Tom and his wife, the Martinez family, and several other neighbors who'd become friends. We ate too much food, drank too much wine, and told stories late into the evening. At one point, standing in the kitchen while helping clean up, Jennifer raised her glass. "To Ethan," she said, "who took on the HOA and won." Everyone cheered and raised their glasses. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and pride. "To good neighbors," I countered, "and to standing up for what's right." We clinked glasses, and I looked around at these people who'd become my community. This was what a neighborhood was supposed to be. Not a place of rules and violations and power trips, but a place where people looked out for each other, where disputes were handled reasonably, where everyone had a voice. Sunset Ridge wasn't perfect. The new HOA board still had to deal with legitimate issues, maintaining common areas, enforcing reasonable rules about truly problematic behavior, managing finances responsibly. But they did it with transparency and fairness, and that made all the difference. I sometimes thought about that first morning, opening the Lien notice, feeling my world collapse. I'd had no idea then how it would all turn out. I'd been terrified, angry, and overwhelmed. But I'd gotten good advice, found an excellent attorney, and refused to be bullied into submission. And in the end, justice had actually prevailed. The legal system isn't perfect. I know I got lucky in a lot of ways. I had the resources to hire a good attorney. I had a judge who saw through Patricia's manipulations. I had clear evidence of wrongdoing. Not everyone in an HOA dispute is so fortunate, but my case proved that it's possible to fight back against abuse of power, even when it feels impossible. These days, when I pull into the driveway of my house, the house that used to be Patricia's, I don't think about the legal battle or the stress or any of that. I think about how I'm going to spend my weekend. Maybe I'll have neighbors over for a barbecue. Maybe I'll take Buddy to the dog park. Maybe I'll just relax by the pool with a good book. The American dream, I've learned, isn't just about owning property. It's about the freedom to live your life without harassment or abuse. It's about standing up for yourself when someone tries to take that freedom away. It's about community, justice, and the fundamental principle that no one, not even an HOA president, is above the law. Patricia Kensington would be in prison for several more years, paying the price for her crimes. I would be here, in the house she'd valued more than integrity or fairness, living the life she'd tried to make impossible. It wasn't revenge I felt, looking back on it all. It was simply justice, served exactly as it should be. And every morning when I woke up in my home, looked out at my neighborhood, and started my day without fear of harassment or arbitrary violations, I was reminded of a simple but powerful truth. Standing up for yourself matters. Fighting for what's right matters. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win.